It's great to be back.
Before we even touch on what we're talking about, I have to take a minute, maybe two. I want to talk about the absolute avalanche of feedback we got from the last deep dive. The Stephen Okoniewski episode.
Right, the one on Porter-Pedia.
Exactly. We dove into his new book, Porter-Pedia, and I think it's fair to say we struck a nerve. The inbox has been, lighting up.
Well, it makes sense. People are fascinated by this stuff.
It seems so. People are just captivated by this idea of, what did we call it? A decoder ring for Cole Porter's lyrics.
That's the perfect term for it, because when you really think about it, Porter's songs are these incredibly dense, intricate little puzzles. They're tapestries of the 1920s, the 30s, the 40s.
Right.
And if you don't have a guide, you're hearing the melody, sure. You're getting the emotion. But you are missing the jokes. You're missing the gossip. You're missing the shade he's throwing at some socialite.
And the sheer volume of it. We mentioned there are, something like 2,600 references in that book?
It's a staggering number. You have to get the book.
You just have to get the book. We've put the link right there in the episode description. I promise it is worth your time.
Highly, highly recommended.
But today we are doing something a little different. Today we are pivoting.
We're moving from the text to the context.
Oh, I love that. Yes, we're zooming out from the lyrics to the laboratory. We are going to look at the environment, the actual physical space where this genius was manufactured.
The factory floor.
The factory floor. We are taking a deep dive into Cole Porter's life at the Waldorf Astoria, and specifically the Waldorf Towers.
This is such a rich vein to mine. Because it's not just about real estate. It's so much more than that. It's about psychology. It's about, how an artist constructs a physical world that allows them to function at that level.
And just to set the stakes for you listening, Porter didn't just check in for a long weekend. He lived there from the mid-1930s all the way until 1964.
30 years.
30 years in a hotel. So our mission today is to figure out how a hotel suite became this creative factory, this social salon, and really a tool for managing a very specific, very high-maintenance public persona.
And the why is what fascinates me most. Why does a multimillionaire, a man who could afford any mansion in the world, choose to live in a hotel? It wasn't just about luxury. I mean, sure, the Waldorf is luxurious. Nobody's denying that.
Of course.
But this was about something else. It was about engineering a specific type of existence. It was about control. It was about acoustics, which we'll get into. It was about being in New York while remaining completely, utterly separate from it.
So let's unpack this, because I think when we say the Waldorf, everyone has a picture in their head. But there is a geography problem. There's a history problem we need to solve right at the top.
There is. You're right. We need to distinguish the myth from the masonry.
Because there are actually two Waldorfs, aren't there? And I'll be the first to admit, before I did the reading for this, I always kind of conflated them in my mind.
Oh, most people do. It's a very common point of confusion. If you ask someone to picture the classic Waldorf Astoria, their mind probably goes to the Gilded Age, the Astors, the 1890s.
Right, like the world of Edith Wharton's The Age of Innocence, that sort of vibe.
Exactly. That hotel, the original one, was located on Fifth Avenue. It took up the whole block between 33rd and 34th Streets.
Which is, wait a minute, that's where the Empire State Building is now.
Precisely. That building was torn down in 1929 to make way for the Empire State Building. So that old Waldorf, the Gilded Age Palace, it's gone.
It's dust.
It's literally dust. That is not where Cole Porter lived.
Okay, so that's a huge clarification. He isn't haunting the site of the Empire State Building.
No. By the time Porter is setting up shop in New York, the brand has moved uptown. He inhabited the new Waldorf Astoria, which opened in 1931 at 301 Park Avenue.
And this is the massive Art Deco structure we all see today, the one that takes up the entire block.
It's a beast. I mean, it is a limestone, city block-sized monument to modernity. And you have to understand the timing here. 1931, this thing opens right in the teeth of the Great Depression.
That is an incredibly bold move.
It was a massive gamble, but it was designed to be a city within a city. It wasn't just a place to sleep. It had ballrooms, private dining rooms, shopping arcades, even its own private railway sidings underneath it for VIPs.
Wow.
It was designed to be this grand, ordered, modern world, a stark contrast to the chaos and poverty outside its doors.
But even within that massive city block, there was a hierarchy, right? It wasn't all one thing.
Oh, absolutely not. There was a very clear pecking order.
There was the hotel, and then there were the towers.
The Waldorf Towers.
Explain this to me. Because in a modern hotel, The towers usually just means, you need a special key card for the elevator to get to the club lounge on the top floor.
Right. It's a marketing term.
But this was structurally different, wasn't it?
It was completely different. It was a different architectural and social concept. The towers were located in that slender central tower that rises above the main block from the 28th floor all the way up to the 42nd.
Okay.
But the crucial detail, the thing that changes the entire psychology of living there, is the entrance.
The entrance on East 50th Street.
Correct. The towers had a dedicated, private, and very discreet entrance with its own private elevators, its own private staff.
So practically speaking, what does that mean for a resident like Cole Porter?
It means you bypass the chaos.
Yeah.
Think about the main lobby of a massive New York hotel, even today.
It's a zoo.
It's a total zoo. You've got tourists with luggage, you've got businessmen rushing to conferences, you have people gawking at the clock in the middle of the lobby. It is, for all intents and purposes, public theater.
Right, it's a public space.
The tower's entrance allowed you to bypass all of that. You could, in theory, live there for 30 years and never once see a tourist. You walked into a quiet residential-style side door, took a private elevator straight up, and you were home.
It's almost like a vertical gated community.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. Downstairs in the main building, you have the public theater, the noise, the commerce, the spectacle. Upstairs in the towers, you have controlled privacy.
And that tension seems absolutely essential for someone like Porter. He needed that public theater to be Cole Porter, the celebrity, the man about town.
Of course.
But he needed the privacy to actually function, to work, to live.
He played both sides of the building beautifully. He could descend into the Empire Room or the Cert Room to be seen, to hold court, to soak up the atmosphere. And then, when he was done performing the role of the bon vivant, he could just vanish. Retreat up the shaft into the silence.
So getting into this vertical gated community, it wasn't just about having the money to pay the rent.
No, money was a prerequisite for sure, but it was not a guarantee. There was a vetting process.
I was reading in the David Ewan biography, which is a fantastic source, that Porter actually had to wait a full year to get the specific apartment he wanted.
He was on a wait list.
He was on a wait list, a man of his stature.
And he was very specific. He didn't just want a suite. He wanted a suite that was officially classified by the hotel as presidential.
Presidential. I mean, that sounds impressive, but what does that designation actually mean in hotel terms? Is it just bigger?
It's bigger, yes, but it also implies a certain level of scale, security, and prestige. It means it's a residence suitable for a head of state. It has multiple entrances, service corridors, the works. And if you look at his neighbors, that wasn't an exaggeration.
Okay, so who are we talking about here? Who else is living in the towers?
Well, his neighbors included General Douglas MacArthur,
Okay.
the former President Herbert Hoover, who lived there for decades after the White House,
Oh.
Adlai Stevenson, and most famously, the Duke and Duchess of Windsor.
So this wasn't just a celebrity dorm. This wasn't the Chateau Marmont of its day. This was a power corridor.
It was a global power center that just happened to be vertical. By fighting for that specific apartment, Porter wasn't just renting square footage. He was curating his context. He was positioning himself in a very specific caste system.
He was saying, I belong with the generals and the presidents, not just with the actors and singers.
Exactly. He's placing himself above showbiz, even as he defines it. It's a fascinating social maneuver.
So let's just nail down the timeline again. He moves into the towers in the mid-1930s.
Usually cited as 1934 or 1935. It seems to be around then.
And he stays, essentially, until his death in 1964.
Decades. Now, just for the accuracy buffs who might be listening, he did move around a bit within the towers over those 30 years. He didn't stay in one single room for 3 decades.
Right.
But the legend and the bulk of his creative and social life concentrates on one particular suite, Suite 33A.
Suite 33A. The Cole Porter Suite. Let's open the door and walk inside. Because when I started reading the specs of this place, I honestly had to double-check the numbers. They don't seem real.
It's hard to visualize the scale of it, even when you read the numbers.
Okay, so get this. 4,300 square feet.
In a Manhattan hotel. Let that sink in.
That is significantly bigger than most suburban houses today.
It's enormous. It's a mansion in the sky.
And the layout. 5 bedrooms, 5.5 bathrooms.
Think about the maintenance of that. 5 bathrooms to clean, 5 bedrooms to dust in a hotel.
And the floor plan itself, it was designed for a very specific kind of flow. It had 2 separate foyers. I mean, why would you need 2 foyers?
Traffic control.
Yeah.
Again, it's all about the separation of the public and the private. You have a formal entry for your dinner guests, so they walk immediately into the grandeur, the big living room. Then you have a service entry or a secondary foyer for staff, for deliveries, for the musicians coming to rehearse late at night.
It's stage management.
The whole thing is stage management. It all leads into this massive entertaining area, which we'll definitely talk more about. But I want to pause on the decor, because this is where the story gets truly, truly wild.
You're talking about the money.
I am talking about the money.
Porter and his wife, the very wealthy and stylish Linda Lee Thomas, spent approximately $250,000 decorating this suite.
In the 1930s.
In the 1930s.
Let's just sit with that number for a second. $250,000 in the absolute depths of the Great Depression.
When people are lining up at soup kitchens just a few blocks away.
It's another world. If we run that through an inflation calculator, what are we even talking about today?
I mean, it's millions. Depending on which calculator you use and what metrics, you're looking at anywhere from $5 million to maybe $8 million in today's money.
$5 to $8 million.
Spent on a rental.
Yes. That's the part. That is the part that I just cannot get past.
He didn't own the walls. He didn't own the pipes. If the Waldorf management decided to kick him out, he couldn't take the custom wallpaper with him.
It signals a level of confidence, or maybe arrogance, that borders on aristocracy. A normal renter worries about getting their security deposit back. Cole Porter is worried about whether the grain of the marble on the floors he's installing matches his Steinway piano.
It also suggests he viewed this as absolutely permanent. You don't drop $5+ million on a temporary crash pad.
No. He viewed it as building a home that just happened to be encased inside a larger infrastructure that he could control. And the aesthetic. I mean, this was not hotel furniture.
No beige armchairs and generic art prints.
Laugh.
Yeah.
Definitely not. It was consistently described by visitors as a private museum.
So what did they fill it with? What does $5 million buy you in the 30s?
It buys you the world. Objets d'art from all over the globe, a major collection of fine paintings. You'd have old masters hanging next to contemporary works by people he knew, custom-made furnishings, zebra skin rugs. It was all chosen for personal pleasure, not for fashion.
So visually, once you stepped across the threshold of Suite 33A, you weren't in a New York hotel anymore. You were somewhere else entirely.
You were in a European estate. He essentially took the vibe of his grand homes in Paris and his palazzo in Venice and stacked it on the 33rd floor of a Park Avenue skyscraper. It was a projection of his own personal history.
Which brings us to the big question, the one we started with. Why?
The motivation.
Yes. If you have the money to drop $250,000 on decor in 1935, if you have the social standing, why live in a hotel? Why not buy a limestone townhouse on the Upper East Side? Why not build a mansion?
I think this is the absolute core of the story. Porter was solving a very specific set of problems. Let's call it the Porter problem.
Okay, lay out the Porter problem for me.
Problem one is the central paradox of celebrity. How do you remain at the center of the world without the world trampling you?
You want access, but you don't want exposure.
Perfectly put.
Yeah.
A townhouse is exposed. You are right there on the street. People know where you live. Paparazzi can wait on your doorstep. Plus, you have to manage it. You have to manage the roof leaks, the boiler, the security at the front door. It's pedestrian work.
And Cole Porter was not interested in being a building superintendent.
Not in the slightest. The Waldorf provided what I like to call a permanent proscenium. It gave him a stage. He could take the elevator down, be the star of the show, and then simply vanish. Doors would close and he was gone.
It allowed him to be in the city, but not of it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But there was a second, much more practical, much more physical dimension to this choice, and we absolutely have to talk about the accident.
Yes. This is context that changes the entire story.
It changes everything. In 1937, so just a few years after he moves into the Towers, Porter has a catastrophic riding accident on Long Island. A horse fell on him.
And it crushed his legs.
It shattered them. He developed chronic osteomyelitis, which is a horrible bone infection. He was in severe, constant pain for the rest of his life. He ended up undergoing more than 30 surgeries over the next 20 years to try to save him.
So his mobility was severely, permanently compromised.
It was. Now think about a classic New York townhouse. What is it? What is this defining architectural feature?
It's stairs.
It's stairs. 4, 5, 6 stories of stairs. For a man with crushed legs and chronic pain, a townhouse is a vertical prison.
But the Waldorf?
The Waldorf is elevators. The Waldorf is level floors. The Waldorf is a fleet of uniformed doormen waiting to help you into a car without you even having to ask.
So living in the hotel allowed him to effectively outsource his mobility.
It did. But it did something even more important psychologically. It masked the disability as luxury.
That is a profound distinction. Can you unpack that?
Think about it this way. If you have to hire a private nurse to help you up the stairs in your own home, you are an invalid. Your weakness is on display.
Yeah.
But if you have a uniformed doorman in a grand hotel lobby, hold the elevator for you.
You're a VIP.
You're a VIP. It allowed him to maintain the illusion of the effortless, debonair playboy, even when his body was failing him. The hotel's infrastructure of service completely absorbed the burden of his physical reality. It was a survival mechanism for his public image.
And speaking of image, we have to touch on the brand alignment. It's almost too perfect.
You're a Waldorf salad.
That line, from anything goes, you're the top, you're a Waldorf salad.
That lyric only works because the audience in 1934 instantly understands the shorthand. Waldorf equals the best. It equals sophisticated, polished, the absolute peak of high society.
So by living there, he is literally inhabiting his own metaphor.
He is reinforcing his personal brand every single time he gives his address. He's saying, I am the thing I write about. I live inside the world I create in my songs.
It's brilliant marketing, even if it wasn't conscious.
It is. It's a seamless fusion of art and life.
But I want to peel back the curtain a bit more on the actual day-to-day operation of this life. Because I think there's a misconception that hotel living means you just, call down for room service and send your laundry out.
Right. The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody version of events. Very glamorous, but very simple.
Exactly. But that wasn't how Porter lived, was it? He took it to a whole other level.
No, that would have been too common for him. He created what I've seen described as a house inside a hotel.
Explain that concept, a house inside a hotel.
He didn't rely on the hotel staff for his personal needs. He employed a full, private, personal staff that was embedded within the hotel infrastructure. He brought his own ecosystem with him.
So who was on the payroll?
It's a full roster, like a country estate. He had his own valet, his own butler, a personal maid, a chauffeur. His longtime secretary, Margaret Moore, had an office there, and a household mistress to manage the other staff.
That is a small army just to run a hotel apartment.
And this is the absolute kicker for me. A private chef.
A private chef inside a hotel that has some of the most famous restaurants and kitchens in the world.
Yes.
That seems wonderfully, beautifully redundant.
It speaks volumes about his need for control, doesn't it? He didn't want the Waldorf menu. He wanted his menu cooked his way at 3 in the morning if he felt like it. Imagine the logistics of that. You have a private chef cooking in a residential kitchen on the 33rd floor, while 20 floors down, there's this massive industrial culinary operation serving thousands of people a day.
There must have been some friction there with the hotel management.
Oh, I'm sure there was. From what I've read, the hotel staff brought up the groceries and supplies, but once they crossed the threshold of Suite 33A, they were in Porter's domain. It was, for all intents and purposes, a sovereign state.
A sovereign state with its own wildlife.
The menagerie. Yes.
He had a dachshund, right, at one point.
He did, and later, 2 cats. And you have to appreciate the commitment to the bit with the names of the cats.
Anything and goes.
It is almost too perfect. It's like a branding exercise gone absolutely right.
But there is a detail about these cats that I found sort of sad, but also incredibly fascinating.
That they never left the building.
Is that true? They never once left the Waldorf Towers.
Apparently never. They lived their entire 9 lives inside a 4,300 square foot limestone tower in the sky.
Talk about indoor cats. That is an extreme version of it.
Imagine their world. Their entire sensory experience is old master paintings, silk rugs, the smell of expensive perfume, and the sound of a piano. They never touched grass. They never saw a bird that wasn't 33 stories below them.
It's a very specific, rarefied, hermetically sealed existence.
Which, in a way, is a pretty good metaphor for Porter's existence in that suite.
And speaking of sealed environments, let's talk about the temperature, because this is one of those sensory details that really paints a picture of what it must have been like to actually stand in that room with him.
The icy rooms.
Yes. Porter apparently preferred a freezing environment to work in.
He did. There's a famous quote attributed to him. I prefer going through life in paper clothes and icy rooms.
Paper clothes and icy rooms? What does that even mean?
I interpret it as a desire for crispness, for mental alertness. Heat makes you drowsy. Heat is cozy. Porter didn't want cozy when he was working. He wanted to be sharp. He wanted an edge. Cold provides that.
So he kept the air conditioning, which was a new luxury then, just cranking.
Full blast. All the time. To the point where guests would famously complain about how cold the apartment was. They'd have to keep their coats on.
And his wife, Linda Lee, she wasn't exactly thrilled about living in a meat locker, was she?
No. Linda Lee was, by all accounts, someone who enjoyed comfort. She tolerated it for a long time, but eventually the solution they came to was, well, it was a very 1% solution.
What did they do?
She kept a separate suite on the same floor just to stay warm.
You're kidding. That is a very, very expensive solution to a thermostat dispute.
Darling, I'm a bit chilly. I'll just rent another multi-room apartment down the hall.
Yeah.
It just shows you the insane level of resources they had at their disposal.
And it also speaks to a certain independence in their relationship.
Yes, very much so. It allowed them to be together when they wanted and separate when the climate control or his late-night work habits became an issue. She could retreat to her warm room.
Now, Linda slept in her warm room, but Porter, he wasn't sleeping much, was he? He was a night owl.
A notorious night owl.
Mm-hmm.
And this brings us to the whole creative laboratory aspect of the suite. It wasn't just a home.
There's this myth about Cole Porter that I think we really need to bust. The idea that he was this effortless, champagne-sipping genius.
The gin and tonic school of songwriting?
Right, that he would just, sit at a party, tickle the ivories, and a fully formed, perfect hit song would just fall out of his sleeve.
And he cultivated that myth. He loved it. He wanted people to think it was easy. It was all part of that rich amateur persona he projected. But the reality of what went on in Suite 33A proves the exact opposite.
This was a workspace.
It was a factory, a disciplined one.
Tell me about the desk. The descriptions of his workspace are amazing.
Obsessively tidy. Every single object had a precise, designated location. Dictionaries, a thesaurus, multiple rhyming dictionaries.
So he used tools. This wasn't divine inspiration.
He used tools like a craftsman.
Yeah.
And he wrote on foolscap paper. He was left-handed, by the way, which many people don't realize.
I did not know.
And everything was organized in neat manila folders.
Yeah.
This wasn't some chaotic bohemian creativity. This was disciplined. It was architectural. It was rigorous.
But here is the technical detail, the construction detail that really blew my mind. The lengths he went to for sound control.
The acoustical mud.
Yes. What on earth is acoustical mud?
So you have to imagine the problem. You're living in a steel-framed skyscraper. Sound travels through steel and concrete. Porter works after midnight. He wants to be able to pound out a new rhythm for a Broadway show at 2 o'clock in the morning. But he has General MacArthur or Herbert Hoover potentially sleeping right next door.
Not to mention Linda down the hall trying to stay warm.
Right. So he had the walls of the piano room treated with this special, heavy plaster compound. It was literally referred to as mud by the tradesmen who installed it.
And what does that do? How does it work?
In acoustics, mass stops sound. This mud added incredible density and mass to the walls. It essentially created a soundproof bunker, a box of silence.
So he turned a luxury hotel suite into what was effectively a recording studio isolation booth.
Decades before that was a standard thing to do. It just shows you how serious he was about his process. He was willing to physically modify the architecture of the building to protect his work habits.
It completely changes the image. You imagine him in a tuxedo with a cocktail, but the reality is he's in a freezing cold, soundproofed room, sweating over a rhyme scheme at 3 a.m. while the rest of the city sleeps.
That is the real Cole Porter. The Waldorf wasn't just a place to party. It was the processing center for his ideas. He famously said, "I never stopped thinking of songs I wrote night and day in a taxi." But the Waldorf is where the idea sketched out in the taxi became the finished, polished jewel.
So the work happens in the icy, silent room. But then the fun happens. And we can't talk about Cole Porter at the Waldorf without talking about the parties.
The salon.
And I think salon is exactly the right word. Because when I hear party, I think loud music and chaos. That wasn't the vibe here, was it?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
You have to contrast it with the public nightlife of the era. Think
Yeah.
about a famous nightclub in the 30s. El Morocco, the Stork Club. They were smoky, they were loud, they were chaotic, full of strangers bumping into you.
And flashbulbs from the gossip photographers going off constantly.
Constantly. Porter's parties were the antidote to all of that. They were intimate. They were invitation only. They were described as lightly bohemian, but always highly polished, civilized.
And the centerpiece in the main room really sets that tone.
The pianos,
2 of them.
2 baby grands, positioned back to back.
Why back to back? What does that arrangement do?
It's a very specific setup for collaboration and for performance. One of the pianos, a Steinway, was actually a gift from the Waldorf management, which is a pretty nice pick.
Not bad.
Having them positioned like that meant you could have spontaneous duets, you could face each other, one person could play rhythm, the other could play the melody. It encouraged this playful musical dialogue.
So it turned the party itself into a performance space.
A working musical laboratory that was cleverly disguised as a cocktail party. You might have someone trying out a new song for a show that was opening next week, or you'd have guests drifting in after a theater premiere, still in their tuxedos and gowns, to debrief on the show they just saw.
And the guest list. I mean, if those soundproofed walls could talk.
It's a who's who of the cultural history of the 20th century. Noel Coward was a regular. Ethel Merman, Gertrude Lawrence, Monty Woolley, his old friend from Yale.
These are the titans of Broadway and Hollywood.
Absolute titans. And mixed in with them were the society figures. You'd have an Astor or a Vanderbilt mingling with a Broadway star. It was this perfect blend of high society money and high art talent.
But there is a deeper sociological significance to these gatherings, isn't there? Something really important, especially given the era.
Yes. We have to be real about the 1930s and 40s. Homosexuality was illegal. It was classified as a mental illness. It was incredibly dangerous, and it could ruin your career in an instant.
Even for someone as famous and protected as Cole Porter.
Especially for someone as famous. He was married, which provided a certain amount of cover, but he was a gay man. Many of the men in his circle, like Noel Coward and Monty Woolley, were in the same boat.
So the Waldorf Towers provided something incredibly rare.
It provided a sanctuary. Because of that private entrance, because of the presidential level of security and discretion, because of the soundproofing. Suite 33A was a safe space.
A place where you could be yourself.
You could be your authentic self without the constant fear of a police raid or a blackmail attempt or a gossip columnist seeing something they shouldn't.
That adds such a layer of poignancy to all the glamour. It wasn't just about champagne and witty banter. It was about survival. It was about safety.
It was a community, a chosen family, huddled together for safety in a castle in the sky.
Now, speaking of neighbors and gossip columnists, we talked about the generals and the presidents. But there was one very famous neighbor who lived a few floors down who sounds like an absolute handful. Elsa Maxwell.
Elsa. The legendary feud or friendship. It was a bit of both, really.
She was a professional gossip, right? That was her job title.
She was a gossip columnist and professional party thrower of her day. She had a massive audience and a very sharp tongue. And she and Porter had this ongoing, very public banter.
Tell us the cake story. This really cracked me up because it feels so petty in the most delightful high society way.
It's perfect. So it's Christmas time. Porter decides to send her a gift. He sends a beautiful Christmas cake, a very nice gesture, but he decides to upgrade it. He includes a 1-pound tin of very expensive top-grade caviar.
A very generous gift.
You would think.
But
Elsa Maxwell goes on her television show, she had a TV show by then, and announces to the entire world that she hates caviar, loathes it.
Oh no, she publicly returns the gift, essentially.
She mocks it on air. Why would he send me this foul stuff? And, of course, word gets back to Porter immediately.
Of course. They live in the same building. The news probably traveled up the elevator.
And his response perfectly captures his wit. He didn't get angry. He didn't get defensive. He just deadpan to a friend. Next time we'll give it to the birds.
Laughs, give it to the birds. That is brutal.
It illustrates that vertical neighborhood dynamic perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
The wit wasn't just in the songs. It was circulating through the elevators, through the hallways. They were living in a small village of very rich, very sharp-tongued people, all stacked on top of each other.
It really was like a sitcom cast, but with billionaires and ex-presidents.
Exactly.
We are getting toward the end of our time here, but we need to clarify the end of the story. Because there's a persistent myth that you hear all the time that Cole Porter actually died at the Waldorf.
Right. You hear this a lot, the ghost of the towers. It's very romantic.
But the record needs correcting on that.
It does. It's a great story, but it's not true. Cole Porter did not die at the Waldorf. He died in Santa Monica, California in 1964.
So why was he out on the West Coast at the end?
It was entirely for medical reasons.
Mm-hmm.
By the late 1950s, his leg condition had deteriorated so badly that nothing more could be done. He finally had to have his right leg amputated in 1958.
And that must have been absolutely devastating for him.
It broke his spirit. By all accounts, he became a recluse after that. The music mostly stopped. The party at the Waldorf era was well and truly over. He moved out to California, largely for the better climate and to be closer to his specialized medical care.
So he ends his days away from the great stage that he built for himself.
He does. But, and I think this is why the myth persists, his spirit, his identity, it feels like it belongs to the Waldorf. It's
Ugh.
inextricably linked to that building.
I completely agree. I think even though he died in Santa Monica, the Waldorf is where the public persona of Cole Porter lives forever.
The experts and biographers all argue that the Waldorf is where that legend was fully realized and performed. And the hotel itself still treats him as a signature resident. They proudly display his piano in the lobby. He's part of their identity.
When you think of Cole Porter, you don't think of a hospital bed in California. You think of Suite 33A.
You think of the view of the Chrysler building from his window. You think of the cocktail shaker and the sound of the piano behind a soundproof door.
So let's wrap this up. We've looked at the architecture, the money, the engineering, the social dynamics, the cats. If you had to boil it down, what is the big takeaway here?
For me, it's that the Waldorf wasn't just an address for him. It was an instrument.
An architectural instrument.
Yes, just like his piano. He played the building. It provided him with access to the people he needed to see. It provided him with control over his physical limitations and his public image. And it provided the perfect stage for his persona.
It allowed him to be fragile physically while remaining completely indestructible socially.
That is beautifully put. That's exactly it.
And here's a final thought I kind of want to leave everyone with. We live in cities, especially cities like New York, that are, by their very nature, designed to make everyone feel temporary.
Transience is the nature of the city, right? You rent, you move on, buildings get torn down, new ones go up.
Exactly. We were all just passing through. But Cole Porter managed to hack that system. By checking into a hotel, which is the ultimate symbol of transience, a place built for travelers, he somehow managed to become permanent.
He became part of the masonry.
He became part of the building's own cast of characters. Against all odds, in a temporary space, he stayed.
And in doing so, he made the temporary feel eternal.
So the next time you listen to Night and Day or I've Got You Under My Skin or Anything Goes, don't just picture a generic stage. Picture that freezing cold, soundproofed, high-altitude suite with the cats wandering around and the lights of Manhattan spread out like sheet music below his window.
That's the image to hold. That's where it all happened.
Thanks for diving deep with us. And seriously, don't forget to check out Porter-Pedia via the link in the show notes. It is the perfect companion piece to this story. We will catch you on the next one.